Live from New York, this is the Harvey Hour. My name is Nathan Harvey. Great to have you in on a Friday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. How are you doing today on this Friday?
I'm always happy on Friday. It's great to have the week over with and get ready for some big football, the two biggest games of the year so far. It's going to be exciting. These teams are very competitive, did well all season, and now it comes down to the final tournament here, NFC, AFC championship games. Who's going to win?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. It's going to be a great I think it's going to be a great debate between us, especially about one of the games. So I'm not going to even hint at.
I know which one that is.
Not even going to hint at until we get to that topic. But I do want to start with this. So as a lot of people thought, even one commenter mentioned it, Jim Harbaugh did indeed get signed. My bad. We'll switch the topics in a second. But Jim Harbaugh did indeed get signed to the Los Angeles Chargers on a reported 5-year deal. Now, everyone knows Jim Harbaugh. He went to the San Francisco 49ers. His first stint as an NFL head coach, made 3 straight NFC championship games, and he made a Super Bowl and was basically, I want to say, a kick return away from potentially winning it. It was the blackout Super Bowl. We had like a half-hour break. It was a weird Super Bowl. But the Ravens, it was against his brother, who he actually plays his first year coaching. The Chargers will play the Ravens next year at SoFi Stadium.
In the first game of the season?
I don't know. It's not the first game of the season. We don't know what the schedule is, but they are playing each other next season, which that should be interesting. But yeah, this should be a pretty decent matchup for both, brother versus brother, and just the Chargers get their head coach, which they've been hoping for since probably Brandon Staley got there. They have not had much success with Brandon Staley, so I want to know, what are your expectations for the Chargers moving forward?
Well, I think they'll be better. Jim Harbaugh is a proven coach. Look what he did in San Francisco. As you said, 3 straight NFC championship games, a berth in the Super Bowl. He was ahead until the blackout in that game, and then after the lights came back on, somehow the Ravens rallied and beat them. But it was a very close game, and he's an excellent coach. He gets a lot out of his quarterback, right? Generally. I mean, he had
Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah. Right? And who
I believe he
was
also
never
had
the
Alex
same.
Smith as well.
Never the same after Harbaugh was not his coach.
Right.
Because he went through the controversial stuff there.
Right.
But he was really never the same after Harbaugh left. So I think that Harbaugh will get a lot out of Justin Herbert. And I think he'll have those guys fired up. I mean, they have the talent. They had the talent, whatever the reason was. I think a lot of it was the coaching there. And they have the talent. They have to make do with the talent they have because their cap space is terrible. And so they aren't going to be able to sign many people. So they got to work with what they've got. I have a couple of thoughts on Jim Harbaugh, though. He was at Michigan for 9 years, right? Took him 9 years to get to a championship game and won the championship. He won the conference titles regularly, but didn't have much luck in the bowl games, right? Until this year, one. He had this issue with the stealing signs scandal, right? And
very Belichick-esque.
And he was suspended for 4 games because of it, right?
Yeah.
And if he continued at Michigan, it's not over. I think there's going to be an investigation of it, right? And so he was worried that he might suffer significantly more sanctions as a result of that. And his lawyers were negotiating with Michigan on staying there, wanting clauses in his contract that he'd be protective if there was any issue with further sanctions. So they eventually came through with that. They offered that to him, but too late. He signed with the Chargers. But you know what? I think he would have signed with the Chargers anyway, because I think he was worried about that.
Okay.
And I think that brought him back. I think that's one of the main things that brought him back to the NFL, because over the past 3 or 4 years, his name has been in talk for many head coaching positions, and lots of teams would have liked to give him a deal. He just didn't want to come back to the NFL. But now he's back, and I think that had a factor in his return.
Oh, I would probably say big time. I mean, if you're going to get suspended or whatever the case may be, yeah, I would say you want to return to sort of negate that and say, you know what, screw you, NCAA. I'm taking my things to the NFL. And he fell into probably the perfect place. No GM at the time, and now Jim Harbaugh gets to be the head coach, and I'm sure he'll have personnel power. But I do want to get like the bad side of this job away. They have the 4th worst cap situation this offseason. They have negative $44 million in cap room. So it's not a pretty sight when it comes to that. You have a couple contracts you need to work out. Khalil Mack, you're probably going to keep Joey Bosa, Derwin James. You might have pieces you want to move. Now you also have Quentin Johnson didn't have a great rookie year. Mike Williams is always banged up. Keenan Allen's always banged up. You're paying him a pretty penny at his, I think he's 30, 31 years old. Oh, you have to deal with Austin Eckler. He wasn't enjoying, his time there this year, because he even said that the worst situation would be to stay with the Chargers, and he had to stay with the Chargers this season. So you have a couple situations you need to iron out. However, this is where we get into the good side. The first one would be you have the most important position solidified in Justin Herbert. Then you have another incredibly, incredibly important position, the left tackle. You have that Rashawn Slater is a very, very good left tackle. You also have an incredible pass rusher in Joey Bosa and or Khalil Mack, depending on if you want to keep him. You have a couple nice. You have a Asante Samuel Jr., a pretty good cornerback. You have a lot of pieces there. You even have a star receiver. Now he's 30, 31 years old, but Keenan Allen has been a very, very good receiver. So you have a lot of the pieces, and this is sort of the Tom Brady-ish move. All they needed was a head coach. Brandon Staley and his defensive schemes, and by the way, he got interviewed today to become a defensive coordinator. I don't know why you would just hire him, because just look at what he did with the Chargers. All that talent, all that money, and it was wasted because the head coach wasn't that good. So I don't know how Brandon Staley's getting defensive coordinator interviews, but so be it. But Jim Harbaugh, this is a beautiful situation. You're going into a situation where every key piece has been basically solidified. Quarterback, left tackle, pass rusher, and one very good cornerback. There's not much you need to do to make this team succeed other than build up a proper culture. I think Mike Vrabel would do okay here, but I do think Jim Harbaugh was the right hire. It's very, very good for them. 5-year deal. You have a little... Now with Michigan, you have a lot of wiggle room generally, because you're coming from a reputation of a very, very successful head coach in the NFL. You had a little bit of wiggle room with Michigan, and plus you were still winning bowl games, winning out your division and everything like that. The playoffs is where it got a little bit hairy, and then he was able to overcome that this season when he beat Washington in the national championship game. So I think you don't really need wiggle room at all. I think depth might be an issue. Wide receiver, you need depth at that. Mike Williams is always banged up. Quentin Johnston doesn't look like a hit. It looks more like a miss. I don't know what I think they may have the 6th or 5th pick. They like Brock Bowers at that position in a lot of mock drafts. I wouldn't hate that. I might get another offensive lineman, maybe a pass rusher. This draft is very good on receivers, quarterbacks, and edge rushers. And you have a couple nice tackles, but they'll go very, very early on. So there's not much Jim Harbaugh needs to do to be successful besides build up a culture, which is very difficult. But it's not like you're rebuilding a team. You go to Washington, you need pieces. You go to the Seahawks, then you need a couple pieces there.
Seahawks are pretty.
You go to the
bad.
Panthers, you need a lot of work
Yeah, right.
there.
Yeah, you need a lot of work there. Well, the Panthers picked their head coach.
Right, Dave Canales, which, hey, he did a great job with Baker. Maybe we could see a repeat of that with Bryce Young. I don't think so, but that is potentially an option there. So I do think this is a great hire for the Chargers. My expectation, because that is the question posed, what are my expectations? I'm going to say first season, you go 9-8, at least. You're at least going to have a winning record. Because I just think every piece of the puzzle is there. It may not be the best puzzle in the world, but you have a lot of the pieces there.
Mm-hmm. And look at the division. I mean, the division,
So
what we thought
difficult.
looked like a pretty tough division, doesn't look so tough anymore.
I think next year is going to be
the Broncos, they got a quarterback issue.
They're probably going to get rid of Russ.
They're probably going to get rid of Russ and Stidham. I don't know.
He ain't going to be the answer.
Yeah. So what are they going to do?
They could be looking at a new quarterback.
Yeah. So they could draft somebody, right? So they have a young quarterback. The Raiders.
They got Antonio Pierce. Antonio Pierce, head coach. They played for him, which is great. He got the job. Yeah. Offensively, is Aiden O'Connell the guy? I mean, since Antonio Pierce is the head coach, he's not going to go back to Jimmy G. He was the one that benched Jimmy G in the first place. Right. So they're probably going to be looking at a quarterback.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And then the Chiefs, of course.
Chiefs had Mahomes and Andy Reid. Andy Reid, although...
Andy Reid might retire.
Maybe. Probably not, though. Travis Kelce, too.
He's not going to retire, he said.
Yeah,
he said that was noise. That's
fair
not what I'm going to do.
Fair. So...
So I think the Chargers could, not easily, but possibly be second place in their division. They could get a wild card. I don't see them being first. I think the Chiefs will probably be first, but they could potentially be second.
I would say that's kind of a given. You kind of have to be second in that division. The Raiders go back to being the last one, and I think just because of the quarterback issues, I'm not going to see the Broncos really contest for it. Although we could be wrong. Although I think just the way they handled the Russ situation at the very end, I don't think it was necessary. But Sean Payton, they didn't really work out. From the very beginning, you could tell that stuff was changing. Sean Payton got rid of his office, couldn't allow Russ to bring in all of his, his posse around there, any of his group, really. He wanted to be more of a team thing, and Russ was a very individual type of player, and he got rid of that. So I don't think it would have worked out from the beginning, and it didn't work out. Moving forward, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. But I do think this is a great hire because Jim Harbaugh is a winner.
Yeah.
And what fits the Charge, at least this current team, is the defense is super expensive. And Jim Harbaugh, look at Michigan's defense last year. They played hard-nosed, physical defense. I mean, people are getting beaten, bruised, banged up. And another thing that's great is that I think this sets up the Chargers for maybe 3 years of potentially hitting a bunch of draft picks. Because Jim Harbaugh was out there recruiting guys in high school. So now you look at guys from high school, you see him go through college, and you're like, I'll just take that kid. I thought he was a 4-star recruit. I'll just draft him now.
Yeah.
So Jim Harbaugh has that slight advantage.
Well, didn't he say something about J.J. McCarthy, who was announced for the draft, that he's the best quarterback ever to come out of Michigan?
Yeah, he said he was the best Michigan quarterback. Tom Brady agrees with him.
Really?
So, yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's some social media banter, I'm sure, but... Yeah, I mean, it would not surprise me, just with the running back situation, Austin Eckler. Would not surprise me at all if Michigan goes out and drafts Blake Corum. Not at all. Because he was Michigan's running back. I thought he was very good. I thought he'd be a second-round running back. It would not surprise me at all if in the second round he's not picked, and then the Chargers pick us up, and they say, okay, we'll take Blake Corum. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Okay, well, we'll see.
Because it works with Jim Harbaugh, the head coach.
Yeah. I see Sharon Moore as the likely candidate to be the replace Harbaugh at Michigan. He's the OC offensive line coach who took Harbaugh's place when he was suspended and won all 4 games. So.
Right, they went undefeated without Harbaugh there. So, that's why I said 9-8. I could at least 9-8. The thing I'm going to be looking at is how is Justin Herbert going to look? Because passing wise, and that's why I said J.J. McCarthy's assistant quarterback, was because that they weren't heavy in the pass game. You weren't seeing J.J. McCarthy go out there and throw 45 passes for 350 yards and 6 touchdowns. You were seeing, like, we saw it in the national championship game. Was it 10 of 16 for 170 yards? So I think Justin Herbert, we're not going to see, 4,500 yards and 38 touchdowns. We may see 4,000 yards and 29 touchdowns like we've been seeing the past couple of years, but the running game gets picked up.
Yeah.
The opposing score is going to be lower with more takeaways on the chart. That's what my guess would be.
Harbaugh always had a balanced offense in San Francisco. Right.
Well, it also helped to have that mobile quarterback in Colin Kaepernick, although he did have some success with Alex Smith in his first year coaching. I mean, Alex Smith, you would consider him a pretty good quarterback. He wasn't perennial playoff winner and Super Bowl competitor.
No, but he was a good quarterback.
No, he was a good quarterback. So I think we're going to see efficient numbers from Herbert, not Mahomes, Brady, Manning type numbers, Drew Brees numbers where they're throwing for 5,000 yards. We're probably going to see low 4,000s with maybe near low 30 to high 20 touchdowns and probably low turnovers. I think instead of giving up the most passing yards per game basically this season when Herbert was out there, we're going to see a pretty decent defense, I think. Because if you keep a lot of those pieces and you figure out the cap situation, I think with the culture and the ability to coach that Jim Harbaugh has, I think the Chargers are going to, and I said this to enter last season because I thought it at the time, I think that they could compete for the AFC West. If the Chiefs don't fix their wide receiver problem, I think we're going to see similar things as we did this year. Now, Mahomes is going to be spectacular. We're going to talk about it later on in the show. Mahomes is going to be spectacular regardless because he's Patrick Mahomes. But I just think if the Chargers could actually be competitive and have a decent defense, I think we're going to see a pretty good Chargers team. And I'm not saying they're going out and win the AFC West. I think it's going to be a much closer race than it has been in previous years, especially the past 2 years when they're barely making the playoffs. And then we could always talk about the Jaguars-Chargers game where they were up 27-7, 27-3, or whatever the case may be, and they fall apart in the second half and lose that game. So Jim Harbaugh, that ain't going to happen to Jim Harbaugh. That happened to Brandon Staley, though, just because Brandon Staley, I don't think, is a good coach. So Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers, 5 years. 5
years. Didn't say how much money.
Well, they never disclose, coaches' money. Yeah. We don't know how much Bellichick makes. We had to guess. The estimation was
made huge money.
$25 million a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's probably sorry to lose that.
Hey, we're gonna wait and see if another team signs it, which we're actually gonna talk about later on in the show. But I want to get into this topic because this was fascinating. So recently, Kayvon Thibodeau, Giants edge rusher, he went on to Carmelo Anthony's podcast to discuss the Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley contract situation, and this is what he had to say.
Let me tell you what I'm mad at, and this is the only thing I'll say about that. What I'm mad about is that Saquon, because if you look at the game, the tape, Saquon was responsible for at least 30% of our explosive plays.
Oh, yeah. Not more.
Talking about the year we won the playoff game. So for me and for the integrity of, working together and hard work and we all believe the same things, I feel like Saquon should have got paid first.
I mean, you can't be wrong about that. I've been talking about that for years. I want to know, do you agree with Kayvon Thibodeau's comment?
Well, whether I agree or not, that was a stupid thing for him to say, okay? Because he's dissing the guy that drafted him, okay, and is going to have a big say in his contract going forward if the Giants decide to re-sign him after his rookie deal's up. His second year was not, even though he had 11 and a half sacks, when you look at his production in terms of beating his guy on every play, right? He went from 68th in the league last year to 100th this year. So, and there were 6 games where he didn't even have a tackle or a quarterback pressure. So the guy didn't have a very good year. What's he running his mouth for here? I mean, I think he's in danger of getting himself traded.
Nah, I don't know about that.
Yeah. Well, or what are they going to think if he comes up small next year and the year after? He's not going to get another big contract. He's not going to get a big contract.
Ooh.
Right? This guy, he's dissing the guy that drafted him. I think that doesn't play well. That doesn't play well at all, Nate.
Well, I'm saying this right now, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you that a player is saying that about the leader or the supposed leader of the team, the quarterback, Daniel Jones. However, I've brought this graphic up before. It's been a couple months. It's been a while. Last time I brought this up, I believe we were talking about that running back issue where they weren't getting paid enough, and Saquon did not get his long-term deal that he was hoping to get. But let's bring up this graphic. This is Daniel Jones when the Giants rushed for under 100 yards and then rushing for 100 or more. This was not this past season, but in 2022 when Daniel Jones had his best year, when people were saying that he was a top 10 quarterback. This is Daniel Jones when the Giants rushed for under 100 and 100 or more. You see the difference, just how good the running attack is. And the big plays and the touches, yeah, that was true. Saquon was phenomenal when the year Daniel Jones played like a top 10 quarterback. I'll read off the numbers. So under 100 rushing yards in 2022, Daniel Jones was the Giants were 5-7. Daniel Jones had a 65% completion percentage, about 179 passing yards a game, and a passer rating of 86.6. When the Giants rushed for 100 or more yards, the Giants were 5-0. Daniel Jones had a 72% completion percentage, about 265 passing yards, and 113.8 passer rating. So while you may not like that Kayvon Thibodeau said this, he's not wrong in any regard. He's not wrong, because if you throw for 15 touchdowns and you rush for 7 more, 22 total touchdowns is not worth $40 million.
Okay, maybe it's right. Okay, but it's still a stupid thing to say. But for an additional reason, Saquon Barkley is probably not going to be in the Giants next year, right? He's a free agent. Who needs a running back? Who needs a running back? The Cowboys need a running back.
Okay.
The Cowboys need a running back, and Saquon Barkley will be the perfect choice for them.
Would you say Saquon or Derrick Henry, though? Saquon or Derrick Henry?
Either one, actually. Either one. And maybe Derrick Henry might be just a hair ahead of him, but I think Derrick Henry's got a little more mileage on him than Saquon does. So,
I'll agree with that.
Yeah. So I think there's a very good chance Saquon Barkley won't be with the Giants next year. So why is Thibodeau out there defending him? Thibodeau has been out there and said before, I'm in this for me. I'm looking out for me. Well, he blew it there. Wow. He wasn't looking out for him.
Yeah.
In those statements, because he put himself in a bad spot, not only with Daniel Jones, who he'll have to see when he walks in the locker room next year, and Saquon Barkley won't be there, good chance, or the GM who drafted him and gave him his contract is going to be seeing this and say, I wonder about him, Kayvon. He didn't really play up to what we expected in his second year after a good rookie year. But look at that other stat. He was number 100. Number 100. And there was 6 games where he was really not a factor at all.
Right.
And the inconsistency, Nate.
Yeah.
You can't have that from a player supposedly of that caliber.
No, I get you. I will say, though, I will be fair. Containing sound bites and clips, you have to get the best part, or whatever, just for the sake of the clip. Right before that, he did say that he is a fan and believes in Daniel Jones. However, I'll say this. Great. I will say this. Saquon Barkley probably should have gotten paid, and this is what the franchise tag was kind of made for. Like, for instance, I don't think the Dolphins should get rid of Tua. Do I think they should franchise tag him? Probably, because you've seen, inconsistent play, injury history, and then you have one pretty decent year this year. Daniel Jones, same exact thing. He looks like a bust for 4 seasons. You give him you deny his 5th-year option, and guess what? This was year 1. You had to pay him because you didn't give him the 5th year. You could have franchise tagged him and paid Saquon. I think that would have been the smarter idea.
In hindsight, that would have been the best move because Daniel Jones got hurt.
You didn't even need hindsight. Right, yeah. You just got to look at your production on the team. And I argued this on the show a couple times now. And it's simply the fact that Saquon Barkley was a more efficient, more effective part of your offense than Daniel Jones was. Yeah. He dinked and dunked his way to victory. Now, he won a couple games, but when it mattered, when he needed to be the top 10 quarterback, people were wondering, and not beating the fraud Vikings in the playoffs, you go up against the Eagles. Look what happens. Daniel Jones looks ineffective. You go into this season, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, you get pieces there. You have a couple new pieces on the offensive line, a pretty good rookie center. Andrew Thomas, he's sort of lit up as a left tackle. You get Darren Waller. You get a tight end instead of, I want to say Bellinger. I might get the last name wrong. But you didn't have a great tight end last season. You go out and get Darren Waller, who was very good for the Raiders. He had a little bit of an injury history, but he was good for the Raiders.
And he got hurt for the Giants.
And I will say this, Thibodeau's perception of how far the Giants goes, not great, because he thought entering the season, based on what he saw in practice, that this would be a Super Bowl team. Not a great outlook on how the Giants' season would turn out, but look what happens. Even with Darren Waller, even with a brand new speedy receiver in Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, you're getting healthy again, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton. Now, I'm not saying they're all-star receivers, but you have a couple decent, I think Jalen Hyatt, speedster, great. You have a speed guy. A lot of teams are hoping for a speed guy. And look at the difference between a veteran in Tyrod Taylor, I keep saying Danny DeVito. Tommy DeVito looked pretty good in a couple of games. He won 3 straight games, which is unheard of for a undrafted rookie. And then you see Daniel Jones. I think he went, 2-6, and he resorted back to a couple of years ago when he was fumbling, tumbling, and stumbling his way to a bunch of losses and throwing it to the other team. Now, you can argue the offensive line. Look at Tyrod Taylor with this offensive line.
There's another
Look
factor.
at DeVito with this offensive line.
There's another factor here that needs to be considered.
Go for it.
And it's something that was talked about, and we saw a lot of evidence of this past off season when running backs are being disrespected.
Yeah.
Right? They don't get the big money.
Correct.
And they're seen as pieces that can be replaced interchangeably and that have a short longevity. They don't last long because of the role they play and the hits that they take. So that's kind of how this played out, I think. They looked at Daniel Jones and said, he's somebody we're going to build around him. He had his good season. He's shown promise. We're going to give him a 4-year contract, and we're going to build around him. And it hasn't worked out so far. Yeah. It doesn't work out because Daniel Jones got hurt. He was ineffective when he did play. Not 100% his fault. The offensive line was a sieve. He took a lot of hits, and so much so he wound up getting knocked out for the rest of the season. He hurt his neck again. Yeah. Then he wound up hurting his knee. So, he's banged up and out. So, in hindsight, it looks like it would have been better to franchise tag him, and then you could be off him if you wanted to. And Saquon Barkley, you could have given a 3-year deal because I'd say Saquon wants to go elsewhere. He's going to want to go elsewhere.
I would as well.
Yeah, and you know what? He might get hit with a franchise tag again.
He probably will.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's what I projected as soon as he got franchise tag.
To me, the franchise tag is a bad thing because it alienates players, right? And it's not something you use to build for the future. It's a short-term thing to try to hang on to a player that has promise and could go elsewhere, and it just upsets the player, and the player really, to me, is not totally on board because he's upset that he got the franchise tag, and he's thinking about it expiring so he can look for another team.
Right.
So I don't like the franchise tag. I think when you use that, it's a desperation move, I see.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. And I'm not going to necessarily disagree with you on that because it's basically like you're forcing this player to prove themselves to you. Because let's say it's off the rookie deal. That's 4 years that you had to decide. And you're still wondering about this player. Instead of letting them go to other places, you're saying, no, we want to keep you for another year just in case you spark up and we'll give you a long-term deal. Meanwhile, running backs, they're in their prime essentially right out of the get-go. So you're actually getting the best years of their career in the first 3 or 4 years. Look at Ezekiel Elliott. His first 3 or 4 years were incredible. Now, the back end, he does get his long-term deal, but in the back end, it didn't look so pretty. Derrick Henry, he's been pretty consistent throughout his entire career. Nick Chubb has been pretty consistent throughout his career. CMC, he had a major injury history with Carolina, but we see his production when he does play. He's incredible. Saquon brings a type of level to that, but I think just because of the situation when he's on the Giants, he doesn't get that same production that he could if he had San Francisco's O-line, if he had Cleveland's O-line. The Titans' offensive line was terrible this year, and look at some of the production that he had. Yeah. We had games where he rushed 20 times for 30 yards, or whatever the case may be. It didn't look great.
Yeah, it hurt the quarterback play a lot.
Massively, because Will Levis loved to work play action.
Yeah.
And also, the offensive line and the play action helps with Will Levis's deep balls, which he threw basically more than anyone when he was out there. So, it does help that. But, yeah, Kayvon Thibodeau. taking a low-key shot at his quarterback.
Crazy.
I mean, we also agreed that $40 million might be a little bit too much to pay. I said that sort of jokingly, but kind of seriously, that I wouldn't pay him $15 million.
Daniel Jones got lucky on that one.
Absolutely.
He got very lucky on that one.
Absolutely. And now what's crazy is that you still basically have one forced year left with Daniel Jones. You can get off him after next season, but you have that 1 year still with them. So, I don't know.
The Giants have a pretty high draft pick. It'll be interesting to see who they draft. Yeah, maybe they'll draft a quarterback.
Bo Nix. A quarterback. Yeah. I go the best offensive lineman or a quarterback. One or the other.
We'll see.
Yeah, we will have to wait and see. All right, let's get into our next topic here. This one is interesting. Very, very interesting. So the Falcons decide to hire former Rams defense coordinator Raheem Morris and leave Bellichick in the dust. Now, Raheem Morris and the Falcons actually know each other pretty well. If we remember, when Dan Quinn got fired after the first 5 games and he went 0-5, Raheem Morris stepped up and went 4-12 to finish out their. He went 4-something to finish out the year, but he did have 4 wins, and the Falcons, that were the only wins of the season that they had back in 2020. So they meet ways once again. They merge once again. Meanwhile, Belichick, who went there twice, had dinner with, I believe, Arthur Blank. He's now unemployed still. The Commanders seem like they're going with Ben Johnson. The Seahawks are really engaged with Dan Quinn. Not looking good for the future Hall of Fame coach. I want to know, what does the hiring of Raheem Morris mean for the chance that Belichick is not a head coach next season?
I'll get into that in a second, but first I'd like to say I think the Falcons made a huge mistake. Okay, they could have had the winningest coach in NFL history. He was interested in coming to your team. He had several interviews. Arthur Blank wanted him in the worst way, and I think he would have done very well there. It would have been very interesting for the NFL, for the viewership, for the fans to see Bill Belichick and a new team after 24 years with the Patriots. Winning 6 Super Bowls with the Patriots, winning 9 straight, going to 9 straight AFC championship games, winning the division, some ungodly number, 12, 13 times in a row. Come on, this guy is a winner. And the reason he didn't go there is because the president of football operations, I guess, Arthur Blank's right-hand guy, was worried that Bill Belichick would come in and upstage him. And this guy is also the head of the competition committee, Rick Murphy. What's his name? McKay, I think.
Yeah, McKay.
Rick McKay.
Rich McKay.
Rich McKay, yeah. Right? He's the head of the competition committee, and Bill Belichick's had a few critical things to say about his work on that committee. And I'm sure that McKay had not forgotten that and holds a grudge and was worried that he was going to lose some clout. So he talked Arthur Blank into not hiring Bill Belichick, which I'm sure they're going to regret.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to respond to that before I want to hear, now
I got a lot more to
Belichick
say
do?
about this.
Go for it. I'll say this, and I'll get into some news we talked about earlier. We have slight breaking news, but we'll get into this after this topic. So, in my mind, not surprised at all. Because I said last time we talked about this, which I believe was on Tuesday, it might have been last Friday, I said that the chance Bill Belichick gets a head coaching job are slim. I said I it was, I might have said a 40% chance not to get a job. Well, now that increased to maybe, for me, in my eyes, 75%. We jumped 35% because I think the Falcons were only really the only ones, because they were the only ones to show interest, only ones to give him an interview. Now, reportedly, Belichick and the Eagles, as well as Belichick and the Cowboys, there was a chance that he could get signed there. Instead, he was the one, I believe, if I get the report right, to deny them. So what did they do? They kept Mike McCarthy. They kept Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni, both of them actually, questionable keeps. More so McCarthy than Sirianni, because Sirianni just made it to a Super Bowl just this past year. So maybe not Sirianni, but definitely Mike McCarthy just with the playoff failures. What I will say is, though, is that they did not want to pursue Belichick because of the loss of power. That not only would Rich McKay lose, basically the entire organization would lose. You would have guys, coordinators, coaches, they have a chance to lose their job because Belichick will want to bring in his own pieces. Now we're left in this sort of limbo with Bill Belichick. What's going to happen? Well, I think I already know what's going to happen. He won't be hired next season. And I think it's not actually as bad as I think a lot of people are thinking. Yes, he's the winningest coach, or will eventually maybe be the winningest coach in NFL history. He's the best playoff coach in NFL history. He has won the most Super Bowls, 6 Super Bowls in 9 tries. It's pretty impressive. If you add on to his defensive coordinator, he has 8 Super Bowls with the Giants, or 2 with the Giants and then 6 with the Patriots. He had probably the greatest dynasty in NFL history, a 20-year run with Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. Outside of that, it's not pretty. And it's the same thing with quarterbacks. It's the same thing with everybody. Yeah, you might be great in 20 years ago, or rather, you have a good 20-year run. But if in the most recent 5 years, you really seem like you lost something, and if we dig a little bit deeper in your career, you start off very rough. 1 playoff appearance in 5 seasons? And then the first season on your new job doesn't look that great. You went 5-11. You start off 0-2 before the angels of heaven decide to descend upon your team. And unfortunately, Drew Bledsoe nearly died against the Jets, but that summoned Tom Brady, and you went on a 20-year run winning 6 Super Bowls in 9 tries. It's incredibly impressive. It's incredibly impressive. But in the past 3 or 4 seasons, we've seen you not draft players that were any good, really lose your way. You seem incompetent on the offensive side. You decide to, by the way, Mac Jones reportedly wasn't even your draft pick. You just said that you would work with your coordinators and coaches a little bit more. So it was their pick, not yours. And not only that, it seemed like you weren't budge on how much power you can give up. And that's where I think that this falls into now. Mm-hmm. Belichick now has transcended from head coach to basically owner on whatever team he's on, because he could run everything: de facto GM, personnel, coaching the team, decisions on who he pays. It's basically everything. It's like he's owning the team. Mm-hmm. And you have about 3 or 4 CEOs, executives, presidents, owners. You have a bunch of people there
with big egos.
I think. I mean, here's another thing.
Particularly with the Falcons. I think they made a huge mistake.
And to me, thinking about it now, why would you go to a team that you embarrassed in 2016 when you beat them 28-3?
That may have had something to do with it, too. Some of those guys are still there, and they probably hold a grudge against that. Yeah, could be.
I'll also say this.
I think that Belichick made maybe a strategic mistake. He should have talked to the Cowboys and the Eagles, even if he didn't really
talk to them.
Talk to them, and that would have, that interest from those 2 teams who are 2 highly ranked teams in the NFL with great organizations, right? That might have spurred the Falcons to say, hey, we better grab him before he goes to one of those other jobs. That was pretty early on in the game, right? That's before the Falcons started talking to a lot of other guys.
Right.
So I think maybe strategically he might have made a mistake. Maybe he thought, hey, I'm in Atlanta. And they gave him every reason to believe he was going to be in. And then these jobs came along. He said, I don't really want to go there. So I'm hanging out for the Falcons because I know I'm going to get that job, and then they didn't get it. So that's too bad, I think. Really.
Well, I'll say this.
I would like to see him coaching in 2024.
Well, I think another bad look, especially this past season, was how petty Belichick actually is. You bench Kayshon Boutte after he had 1 bad game.
Now he's in jail.
Yeah, now he got arrested, but you basically put him in your doghouse until he played 3 total games this entire season. But he wasn't injured through the first few weeks of the season. After week 1, when he couldn't keep his feet in bounds, you benched him. And then not only that, how about you? How'd you end? Your farewell gift to the Patriots. Mac Jones is a healthy scratch. You put him as emergency quarterback 3 and promote Nathan O'Rourke to be quarterback 2? The dude was there for 5 minutes, and he's already a backup quarterback. He doesn't know the system. He still needs a GPS to get him to the stadium.
Yeah.
And yet he's your quarterback too? That just shows how petty Belichick is. And not only that, the Falcons, I don't think they're going to keep Desmond Ridder as their quarterback. But even then, Belichick has shown he can't develop a quarterback right now. He can't develop. Look at Mac Jones. Look at Bailey Zappi. They didn't look great. Offensively, you're going to need to draft some pieces. it ain't going to look great because it hasn't.
Mhm.
I think Belichick hurt his own appearance by the recent lack of success, and this season was a culmination of everything that could have gone wrong for Belichick went wrong. Injuries, bad draft again. Offensively, you look inept. Your defense had a little. It could not do well. Really, to stop the run. I mean, just look at the Commander game. They were going up and down the field on the Patriots there. Now the score said otherwise, but I just think. And another thing, finally, special teams, which the Patriots are notoriously great at, they were one of the worst special teams in the league.
Well, they did the games they lost. Most of them were by less than a score or one score. So, they were close. They didn't have the right quarterback, that's for sure. I do think that one thing Belichick said when he was before he started talking with Kraft about whether he was staying or going, and they made their decision to amicably part ways. I'm not sure how amicable it really is, but he did hint that he would be willing to consider giving up some of his clout, right? And that message doesn't seem to have gotten to these other teams.
They don't believe it.
They don't believe it. They think he's going to come in and steamroll everybody. But, I think that they ought to give him an interview and see, and make a judgment for themselves. No, they only got one interview.
Yeah.
So I think that's weird. I don't get it. So let's just take a look at the teams that are left, okay, that don't have a head coach at this time. The Commanders and the Seahawks. There's only two left. And the Commanders, it looks like they're going for Ben Johnson.
Ben Johnson
right now,
looks like
he's
the favorite.
busy with the NFC Championship game, so he's not going to be interviewing anytime. Well, at least not this weekend.
Right.
And if they make it to the Super Bowl, they'll probably interview in between because it's a 2-week
right. You're the Pro Bowl
stretch.
Right.
And the Seahawks, I guess they're still interested in Dan Quinn, though he laid an egg in the playoffs this year with the poor play of his defense.
You could say Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott. I'm sure he'll use that.
I personally don't think Dan Quinn's that good a choice. I mean, he had a little luck in Atlanta when his quarterback Matt Ryan was playing at the height of his game. But after that, they went downhill. They never got back to the playoffs, I don't think. So I don't think he's that great a choice. But he's probably the one they're going to take. Maybe the Bills are still thinking about McDermott. Maybe they might fire him. Or they were thinking about bringing someone in that could at least get them to win one playoff game. That would be nice. They've lost their playoff game first round 3 of the last 3 years in a row.
Well,
so
if you're not including wild card, the Bills did win the wild card game this year. They beat the Packers. If you talk about like divisional round, championship,
divisional round, 3 years in a row, they're out.
It's been rough.
Yeah. So maybe there's an opportunity there. This isn't going to happen probably, but maybe the Jets should reconsider. I mean, look at Salah. I mean, talk about mishandling of quarterback play. Putting Zach Wilson, having him the backup for Aaron Rodgers, and then after he played so terribly the year before, and then this year basically repeating that.
Yeah,
I mean, he played a little bit better, but not much. And the poor kid, he got hammered again in the press. He's going to be wanting out of New York for sure.
Well,
and maybe the Jets, Woody Johnson, I don't think he's going to do that. So I think you may be right. I don't think it doesn't look good for Belichick getting a job this year, but you know what? It may work out to his advantage. Okay, because if he doesn't get a job, he's going to get a TV job for sure.
You think he's going to be?
A TV job because he did win two sports Emmys when he did the NFL 100 all-time team. He was great on that.
God.
He does have a great sense of humor, which you don't see when he's interviewing with the media because he hates the media, right? But I think that he will get a spot and he will get a chance, and that'll give him an opportunity to go see a lot of the teams. If he's a color commentary guy on a game, he's going to go to see a lot of teams. He'll be talking to a lot of teams. He'll get a chance to rub elbows with some of the ownership and doing that job. And I think in 25, there could be a number of opportunities. And I'd just like to go through a few of them.
I want to say this first, though. You talked about the Jets, right? An anonymous NFL executive did say probably Robert Saleh will not see the end of the season as the head coach of the Jets. He'll probably be fired. So in your New York regard. And by the way,
if they're winning, they won't. But what are the chances of that?
I don't know
the guy is not a winner.
41-year-old Aaron Rodgers is going to be out there slinging and keeping jobs open. Or
Yeah,
keeping jobs
particularly
closed.
if he's got an offensive line like he had this past
Right.
year.
So go with your
Okay, so
your list.
here are 8 possible teams that will be considering a head coach next year, depending on circumstances. Okay, number 1, the Cardinals. Right?
I don't know. They just got Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah, but if they don't step it up with Kyler Murray fully recovered, and they have another season like they had this past season, I think there's a good chance he's out. In the front office at the Cardinals, you have Monty Ossenfort. He spent 15 years in the Patriots front office. So I think that could possibly happen depending on how the Cardinals do. If they don't rebound with Kyler Murray fully recovered, then I think there's a chance that that their coach will be fired, and there could be an opportunity for
Cardinals.
Belichick.
Okay,
There's that. Bills. I think if they another season like this, if they do hang on to McDermott, he might still be fired this year. Then if they don't go deep into the playoffs next year, then I think that will be the end of McDermott, and they'll be looking for somebody that just get us deep into the playoffs, right? Just get us to a championship game. We have never gotten there with Josh Allen, who was an elite player. Get us to the AFC championship game. I think Bill Belichick could be a candidate there. The Bears have a lot of talent now. They're going to be drafting. Right? They're going to have a lot of opportunities to draft 2 first-round picks. They got the number 1 pick in the draft this year. If they don't make hay with that, they did show some signs of improvement with 7 wins this year. Yeah. They started out very slow. They improved during the year. Justin Fields did play better later on in the season, but now there's going to be a new quarterback there and him. I don't know how that works out. If that falls apart, then I think what's the guy's
Matt
name?
Eberflus.
I think he'll be out. Okay, the Cowboys, of course. That's just the end of
McCarthy's probably
McCarthy is probably gone unless he gets to the championship game at least.
Well, even then, he needs to get a new contract. This is the last year of his deal.
This is the end. If he could get a new contract if he got to the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl. And you have Dak Prescott that's going to be at the end of his contract too, right?
Correct.
So I'd say if those guys come up like small like they did this year, then Belichick has a chance there. The Jaguars, right? They were 9-8 last year, but that was when they started out terrible and made a huge run and got to 9-8 and made the playoffs. This year, same record, 9-8, but it was in reverse. They started out great and fell apart at the end.
Yeah,
I think if that happens again, and the quarterback
Trevor
Lawrence underperforms, then I think you'll see their coach fired.
Interesting.
The Giants.
Oh God.
The Giants.
Brian Daboll. It's not
Brian Daboll. This will be his 3rd year. If they tank, and I think
they're not going to tank.
I think it's possible. I really think it's possible because Saquon Barkley likely is not going to be there. If he is, he'll be on the franchise tag and be alienated from the team. Daniel Jones coming back from a bad injury,
and he's just not a good quarterback too.
And
he's
not
just
that
not good.
Right, their offensive line a mess, so they're going to be able to fix that. Their defensive coordinator got mad and quit.
Yeah.
So they got to replace that. If they have a terrible season, I say Daboll is out, particularly if Belichick's available. The New York Giants love Bill Belichick. He went through their glory years with them as a defensive coordinator.
Won 2 Super Bowls.
Lawrence Taylor, he coached Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah.
Right, 2 Super Bowl rings.
Did they give him 2 Super Bowls?
New York has
he gave
sympathy
him 4,
for something like that.
He gave him 4. 2 as a DC,
yeah,
and
that's
2 as
right.
the opposing
2 as
head coach
of the Patriots, right? They love Bill Belichick at the Giants. If Daboll falls on his face again this year, Bill Belichick could be a Giants head coach.
Wow, okay.
Next, the Jets.
Oh,
they definitely have a chance.
Not a chance.
Salah, you said he could be fired in the middle of the season this year.
Right.
So I think if those kinds of things happen, the Jets will be looking, and Bill Belichick will be available. Good chance they'll give him an interview.
Give me your last one. I want to say something about the Jets.
Okay, the Eagles. I think the Eagles.
Okay.
Sirianni. If he doesn't go deep in the playoffs, you saw the look on Laurie's face in the stands when the Bucs were beating them. He was disappointed, man.
Yeah, big time.
And there was some hint to Bellichick, you could come here this year, and now Belichick's probably regretting that. But I'd say next year, if same thing happens, there'll be a chance for that job too. So there's going to be plenty of jobs. He'll have a year to
regather,
and be on TV and be in front of folks and show his friendlier side, which you never get to see when he's a head coach. And
he chooses not to show it.
I think it could all work out well. The only issue there is, just like me, he's getting older. So
that is okay. I'll start with the Jets thing. I forget when I saw it, but Bellichick was in the Jets arena. He was getting showed around with him and Bill Parcells, I believe. He didn't even want to go into the locker room. I don't think Belichick finds the Jets as a very, perfect job for him, especially when he has a quarterback who's 41, and now him and Rodgers have great respect for one another. I just think Rodgers probably, maybe, I'm not, I've no idea. We'll have to wait and see, but the chances he's there 2 years from now, I don't know if that's a high chance that it is. So he'll probably need to get another quarterback. And I just don't think he likes the Jets. Outside of that, there are a number of teams next season.
I think you're probably right there, but here's the one thing. He's got to be very mad at Robert Kraft right now.
Why?
Because he's not going to be a coach. Probably not going to be a coach next year, right?
So why are you blaming Kraft for that?
He's going to want to stick it to Kraft, right? So coming back to the AFC East, we'd love to do that with either the Bills or the Jets.
I'm sure he would love to do that, but to be mad at Robert Kraft, who fired you, I mean, take a look at what his value is. Look, and that is it. You bring up a good point. Yeah, older coaches are not getting jobs. Pete Carroll won't get hired. Guarantee you, Pete Carroll will not get hired. Bill Belichick won't get hired. Brady had 2 suitors. 2 outside of New England. The Bucs and the Chargers. He went with the Bucs. We're talking about the greatest quarterback of all time, who just the year prior to that won the Super Bowl. He had 2 people just because he had a down year and people thought that this was the end for Brady. He went out there and won a Super Bowl his first year. Now, that won't happen with Bill Belichick, just because the teams that are right now available either are rebuilding to a point where they could contend for potentially a playoff spot, or they're the Commanders, that's the Seahawks, or the Commanders who need a culture rebuild, a couple players they need to add, a quarterback who's a massive question, the defense who they gave up their 2 best pass rushers with just this past season. There's a lot going on there. Brand new ownership. There's a lot of moving pieces for Washington. Belichick probably won't get another job as a head coach. Now, honestly, the best thing for Belichick is to step away. Because if he goes to another team and he falls apart again, Belichick probably, most likely, will not be considered the greatest coach of all time anymore. Because we've seen him.
So. Why? Why would you say that? He's the winningest coach.
Well, not yet.
He's got all the stats.
Not yet. He's still got to pass.
So in terms of championships,
if you're
Super
talking
Bowl
championships,
6.
Yes. And
who's going to beat that? When's that going to happen? Who's going to beat it?
Well, Andy Reid has the best shot.
Yeah, but he's old too.
He's old, not as old as Belichick.
There's hints that he may retire at the end of this season.
Well, guess what? He might make his 3rd Super Bowl. He might win his 3rd Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, you got 3 more to go. I don't see it happening.
Right, but here's why people might think that.
4 more to go if he wants to beat Belichick.
Here's why people might think that. Look at Reid and look at Belichick without the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Without Mahomes, he now, albeit, Andy Reid had a couple nice quarterbacks, better than Mac Jones, better than Bailey Zappi, better than Cam Newton. He had Donovan McNabb, I believe he had Michael Vick when he came out of prison. He had a couple nice quarterbacks, but without the greatest quarterbacks of all time that they coached, Andy Reid is a significantly better coach than Belichick was. We've seen Belichick pre-Brady, not great. We've seen Belichick post-Brady, maybe even uglier. And if he goes to another team and they can't make it to the playoffs or they look bad, people are going to be, looking a little bit deeper at Belichick and saying he was a great defensive coach, but outside of the greatest player that this league has ever seen, the winningest player that this league has ever seen, when you talk about who has won the most Super Bowls, you have to start with a player and then go to other franchises. You have to take a little bit deeper look and say Belichick might not be the greatest coach of all time.
Who drafted Tom Brady?
Oh, my God. 24 years ago, 25 years ago?
Who drafted Tom Brady?
It was Bill Belichick.
Yeah. When did he get him? When did he get
pick 199 and decided to keep him on the roster, even though the Patriots had 4 quarterbacks in 1999. I fully get it. I fully get that.
Smart move. Who picked Brady to play in the Super Bowl after he was hurt in the AFC?
Yep.
Championship
game?
And
led them to 15-1 Steelers.
That's a pretty gutsy move.
It is
very gutsy move to say. They hired me to win the games, and I think this gives us the best chance to win. And did they win the Super Bowl?
They did. But, and here's where Belichick gets the credit. His defense slowed down the greatest show on turf. That next Super Bowl, it was Brady in the fourth quarter going touchdown for touchdown with, I believe, going up against, was it Jake Delhomme?
Yeah.
Touchdown for touchdown, and then eventually Vinatieri kicked another game-winning field goal. But it was the first half. Nobody could score. That second half, I think it was 24 points or something like that in the second. So it was some crazy
No, but in
number.
the first Super Bowl, maybe the defense slowed them down in the first half, but not the second half.
Well, I mean,
not the second half. It
the
was
Rams
a tie
scored
game.
17 points.
It was a tie game at the end
scored 17
with a minute and 30 seconds or so left. John Madden's on there saying, "Oh, this is a mistake.
Shut it down and play for overtime." Right.
Shut it down, play for overtime. Who moved him down the field and got in field goal range?
It was Brady.
Tom Brady.
Dinking and dunking to J.R. Redmond and a couple nice passes. Yeah, no, it was a great comeback. I'm not disputing that. And then
those are Belichick's decisions to have Brady in there playing.
Here's the thing: I give Belichick 3 Super Bowls where his side of the ball, the defense was the main reason they won. Didn't Ty Law have a pick 6 against the Eagles in Super Bowls at 38, 39? I believe Ty Law had a pick 6 against the Eagles. And then you go up against the Rams. He won that one the first time. The second time as well.
The second time was the second Super Bowl against the Rams.
It was Rams, Eagles.
The Rams
the first Eagles
had
won.
no offense at all. They only scored 3 points.
Right, 3 points after averaging 33 points.
Yeah.
That's why I give Belichick 3 Super Bowls. The other ones had to require a Brady game-winning drive coming back, 28-3. Now, one of the touchdowns was due to Brady throwing a pick 6 against the Falcons. But outside of that, Matt Ryan was going up and down the field on Belichick's defense. We talk about the loss.
Not in the second half.
Right, not in the second half.
Not in the second half.
Right, not in the second half, and that's why Brady mounted a comeback. I will say this, though. We've had opportunities where Brady, and mainly actually Belichick, has fallen through. The second Eagles Super Bowl is a perfect example of that. Brady threw for 505 yards, a playoff record. And did they win that game? No, they didn't. And we talk about, I mentioned pettiness earlier. Belichick benched the player who played the most defensive snaps in the entire season for the Patriots, Malcolm Butler, who just had 3 years prior maybe the greatest play in a Super Bowl defensively. And you bench him because reportedly he got into an argument with Matt Patricia. And you were trying to say, I don't get it. But so far, Belichick has not been hired. It's not looking good.
I'm predicting
minus 1,600 odds that he's not a head coach next season.
Predicting he will be a head coach again in the NFL.
Just not, maybe not next season.
Maybe not next season. It's not looking so good. But you never know. You never know what might happen. We'll see.
We will see. All right. We're going to take a quick break, but coming up, we make our predictions and we break down Chiefs at Ravens and also Lions at 49ers. More cards are pushed to the table. More toes are straight down. We'll talk about both those games right after this.
Whether you're just discovering your voice or taking your show to the next level, you know what the world needs to hear. All you have to do is say it. With Spotify, set up your podcast. Your food podcast. Your mindfulness podcast. Your never thought you'd get this far podcast. And watch those sparks fly.
I put a picture of the comment.
Drop the episode anywhere people listen. And find out who they're cooking with. Where they're finding inner balance. And why they love your show. You're already a creator. Now you can create, connect, and get paid for your passion with one single free tool. Spotify for podcasters. Talk where the world listens.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name's Nathan Harvey. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. Let's get into our next topic, which is the first championship game of championship weekend, which is the Chiefs at the Ravens. This one's going to be a good one. Chiefs at Ravens is going to be a massive game because what we're seeing from these teams and these players are they're at the top of the game. We probably have the correct matchups when we talk about the performance of each player, and especially superstar quarterback Lamar Jackson had a very interesting comment when talking about how is it going to be like for the first time playing against Patrick Mahomes, and this is what he had to say.
I don't like competing against him at all. But, yeah, I mean, he's a great quarterback. Definitely a Hall of Famer. It's not even it's a no-brainer. He's definitely a Hall of Famer. I believe it's just two greats, up-and-coming greats just going toe-to-toe, like a heavyweight fight, heavyweight matchup. That's just what I see.
So there was Lamar Jackson. I'm going to mention this later, but the Ravens are doing something very, very smart. I want to know, are the Chiefs, this is interesting here, are the Chiefs in danger of getting blown out by the Baltimore Ravens? No. You're saying no?
No, I think it's going to be a very close game. I was tempted to pick the Chiefs. The only reason I'm not, there's two reasons. One, the Ravens are playing at home. I think there's a slight advantage to the home team playing at home in a game this big. And also Joe Thuney is out.
Right.
He's an all-pro, and that guy is great. He was great for the Patriots. He's been great for the Chiefs. It's going to affect their running game. And not only is with Joe Thuney out, which will affect the running game, Pacheco is questionable. And he's not going to be 100%. So those two factors lead me to believe the Ravens will win and cover.
Interesting. So you got the score 28-23.
Yep.
So it's very hard to pick against Patrick Mahomes just because we just saw what he did against the Buffalo Bills on his first road playoff game. This would be his second. And what we saw was Patrick Mahomes not put up gaudy numbers. I think he threw for 215 yards. But his effectiveness, the efficiency that he played at was incredible. Now, Isaiah Pacheco had a number of explosive runs in the game. I think he had over 100 yards, and he played incredible. And when we talk about a blowout here, we've seen something from the Ravens that's incredible. I'm going to bring up the numbers in a second. But Mahomes, he hasn't faced many blowouts. If we're talking about a blowout, and by blowout, I mean 14 or more point loss, I would say that's an absolute blowout. He's only had 4 of them in his career. 3 in the regular season, 1 in the playoffs, which was the Tampa Super Bowl when he barely had an offensive line. So these are the numbers in Patrick Mahomes' blowout. This is how he plays when he gets blown out. A sub 60% completion percentage, 247 passing yards a game, 2 touchdowns to 7 picks, and a pass rating of 61.1. Okay, what about the Ravens' defense this season? Well, in 14 games against winning teams, they were incredible this entire season. Against winning teams, the Ravens' defense has been spectacular. And by spectacular, look at all these numbers. The opponent's touchdown drive percentage, 11.1, that's first in the league. Sacks, 49, first. Pressures, 350, that's first. Forced fumbles, there's 15, that's first. Passer rating allowed, 74.9, that's first. Wins of 14 or more, so they have blowout wins basically, 8, which is not only first in the league, it's the most in NFL history. No other team has had 5 in a singular season. So this Ravens defense has been, we talk about special, and I mentioned this is like the 2000s Ravens defense. I mean, look at the numbers. They're blowing teams out, shattering records out here. The previous record was 5. They have 8 this season. Most of their games, 14 out of the 17 games that they played this season was against winning teams. So this isn't like a Vikings where they had an incredible record, or this wasn't like the Dolphins where you play soft teams in perfect conditions. No, this is going up against 14 teams who ended the season with a winning record. So this is a battle-tested team. The Chiefs, this is going to be the hardest team that they played all season. This team is healthier. Lamar Jackson is healthy, which we haven't seen in a very, very long time. This defense is damn near historic. It's already breaking records for most 14-point wins against winning teams this season. So, for me, I'm not saying it's a blowout. I do think the Ravens win, and they win by 5. They cover. It's 31-26. I'm just saying it's in the cards.
Well,
Ravens won't be surprising if Mahomes plays terrible and they get blown out.
The Ravens blew out the 49ers.
They blew out the Dolphins as well.
Yeah.
They embarrassed the Dolphins.
Yeah.
And this defense, by the way, if we're not only winning teams just in the season, they're first in sacks, first in takeaways, first in points allowed per game, first in passer rating allowed. They're second in red zone percentage, and they're sixth in total yards allowed. The Chiefs are actually better defensively in total yards given up per game. But this defense is first in basically every single category. So
the reason I think it's close is a lot of the factors that you mentioned in terms of, the Ravens being an elite team, but the Chiefs are the defending Super Bowl champs.
Right.
That's got something for a player. That is something that they want to defend. They want to be motivated to retain that title, right? They've had it all year. They're the defending Super Bowl champs. So they've been playing a lot better lately, Nate. I would have to say they've looked a lot better. Their wide receivers even have looked decent.
They've stopped dropping the ball as much.
Right. Rice has looked very good. You have Travis Kelce there, who's a seasoned veteran, an All-Pro, a Hall of Famer, I would say,
absolutely,
for sure. And, he's not getting any younger. He said every one of my 10 surgeries hurts this year. And he's got Taylor Swift as his girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
She could lure him off into retirement, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But I hope he doesn't retire. But I do think that combination of Mahomes to Kelce has worked for them many times. And in the clutch, they've come through time and time again. They have one of the greatest coaches in NFL history, in Andy Reid. I think that there's a possibility they could win this game. And I think it's going to be very close, but I am picking the Ravens.
I think that if the Ravens played the 49ers close, if they played the Dolphins close, I think a lot more people would be picking the Chiefs. But the fact that they went up against the 49ers at the time where they were considered hands down the best team in the NFL, Brock Purdy was an MVP candidate. This was potential MVP versus potential MVP. The winner of this game will most likely end the season as the MVP. And the defense made Purdy look like the last pick in the draft. Lamar Jackson played as efficiently and as effectively as he possibly could. I mean, the 49ers just looked like an inept team. They look like a peewee football team against this team.
They really did play poor.
And my God, the Dolphins. Now, we know the Dolphins are frauds this season, but they made them look worse. Yeah. It's like Pop Warner football.
Yeah.
So this Ravens team is something different. Mm-hmm. Lamar has developed into a legitimate passer thanks to Todd Monken getting Zay Flowers. Mark Andrews will be back for this game. They activated him off the IR today. This Ravens team is something different, and it's not to take anything away from the Chiefs, because I think if the Chiefs were able to win this game, it'd be on Mahomes' shoulders, which is not completely out of the realm of possibility, because we've seen Mahomes and we've seen what people talk about Mahomes as now the greatest quarterback of all time. I think you need more wins there. However, I'm sure there's going to be a debate. Is Tom Brady the Bill Russell of the NFL?
He is.
Where the rings don't equal how great of a player, because we talk about MJ and LeBron as the greatest, not Bill Russell. So he might get into that category of all-time greatest.
That's never going to happen, Nate.
Maybe, I'm just saying maybe. I heard
that is never going to happen.
I'm telling you, I heard a couple people say it.
Yeah, well,
I heard more than one source say that.
That is never going to happen. Nobody else is going to win 6-7 Super Bowls.
Well, who knows? Yeah. Mahomes might win his third.
Maybe he's probably
Three out of
has
4.
the chance. We'll see if he gets. If he gets to 8 Super Bowls, I'll agree with you, but I don't think it's ever going to happen.
I think a lot of people will say just the talent that he has.
The guy takes too many hits. He's running around a lot. He's too mobile.
He's too mobile.
He puts himself out there to be
harm's
hit.
way.
Yeah, puts himself in harm's way too often.
But I'll say, if the Chiefs were to win this game, it'll be on a Mahomes virtuoso. We're talking he's 375 yards, 4 or 5 touchdowns. We're talking like Mahomes becomes like, a godsend right in this game.
I don't see. Do you see that though?
He's gonna be floating on water. He's gonna be walking on water.
The Ravens have such a good defense.
That's what I mean. Mahomes is gonna need to basically walk on water for him to win this game, I think, because the way the defense plays against the all around top tier talent, like I said, the 49ers, right? Whooped them to shreds. The Dolphins, who are frauds, but yet had Tyreek Hill and a running back, Raheem Mostert, scoring like 21 touchdowns during the season. Jalen Waddle, who, I mean, he had banged up injury, right, the season, a couple injuries, whatever the case may be. Like the Ravens beat the crap out of the Lions earlier this season. They didn't even score a point for until the second half. I mean, it was an embarrassment. So the Ravens are playing great. They're playing in an incredible level. It's not a knock on the Chiefs. It's just a praise of the Ravens. Just how well they've been playing, how in sync they are offensively and defensively. And thank God that the Bears decided to get off of Roquan Smith. What he has done for that defense, he's Ray Lewis 2.0. He brings that type of mentality and that physicality to that defense. So I think the Ravens will win here. And like I said, I have them winning. I'll bring up the scores again for everyone at home. It's 28-23 for you, and 31-26. We both have the Baltimore Ravens winning. The spread at the moment is -4. I've seen a -3.5, but we're saying -4 because that's the last odds that I saw. So,
I like Lamar Jackson.
He's a phenomenal player.
I'd love to see him win this game.
I've bashed on him because his passing game wasn't developed, and Greg Roman had the system of head down and run the ball. Todd Monken opened up his passing game much more, and now, look at what he did this season. Yeah. This season, I'm thoroughly impressed.
He's the MVP.
Because I think unquestionably the MVP, and maybe unanimous. Who knows? I guarantee Brock Purdy will get some votes, but I think it is a tremendous performance this season from Lamar Jackson, who will probably be the MVP. All right, let's get into this next one. So this one's going to be interesting. It's the story versus the story. Mr. Irrelevant versus Jared Goff and the Lions, who they're in their first NFC Championship game since 1992. The 49ers have made 4 out of the past 5 NFC Championship games. So both teams are really doing something special this season. Brock Purdy, he only has 4 losses in his entire career. It's incredible what he's been doing. He hasn't even played 2 full seasons yet, and he's been dominant. MVP candidate, while Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions, they're doing something special this year. Dan Campbell's been biting kneecaps and playing physical defense, and he seems really passionate and devoted to his team. It's incredible. It's going to be story versus story. But it's the big question now. Does the Cinderella story continue for the Detroit Lions, or does Mr. Irrelevant, who now I think we now need to call Mr. Relevant, does he get to his first ever Super Bowl?
Niners getting there at 31-28.
31-20.
I see the 49ers -7.5 point spread. I think that is too high. And I think that the Lions are capable of making it very close. And maybe they could sneak both these games. I think that there's an opportunity for either team to win. I give the 49ers the edge here because they're playing at home. And I think that makes a difference. And they're playing outdoors. The Lions are an indoor team for the most part. And I think that the 49ers have the pieces. Deebo Samuel is going to play. I don't know if he'll be able to play 100%, but he is going to be out there. You have McCaffrey. You have Kittle. You have their defense, Nick Bosa. I just think the 49ers have the weapons, and they have the experience being in the playoffs, much more than the Lions do. And I give the Lions a lot of credit. I like Shanahan a lot better than I do Dan Gamble. I think he gambles too much. I respect him. I think his motivation for his players and taking this team, which was nothing 3 years ago, and getting it to the NFC Championship game is a remarkable accomplishment. And maybe they'll have more success down the road, but I believe on Sunday they're going to lose.
So, for me, I've always loved a good story. And I'm going to I showed this the last time on the show. I want to show this again. This is Dan Campbell after their win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Just listen to what he has to say again.
I envisioned that we would have a chance to compete with the big boys. And that's where we're at. All you got to do is get in, and it's about placing yourself the very best position to where you can move. You get a home game, and then maybe you get a second home game. And now all of a sudden it gets a little easier, If you're able to get a 1 seed, you only got to win 2 games, right? And so that's always the objective. But ultimately, once you get in, then it's about matchups, and you find a way to win. And you may have to win 2-0, and it's okay. It's okay. A win's a win in the playoffs. So, here we are. And now we get to go to San Francisco, and, we know what kind of team that is, but we're in a great position. We've got a great opportunity.
I love that. I love that so much. And I want to preface this. The 49ers are the better team. You could argue the quarterback all you want. Who's better, Brock Purdy or Jared Goff? The running back situation, I think the Lions are deeper, but CMC is so far above.
He was close to the MVP award this year.
No, what I'm saying is depth-wise. I would rather take the combination. I'm not saying. Let me stop right there. CMC is so far above every other running back in the NFL, it's not particularly close. But Elijah Mitchell compared to David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, you can get into an argument there. Receiver-wise, because Debo is in there, I think the 49ers have the better receiver core, but I'm not going to short Josh Reynolds and Amon-Ra St. Brown. George Kittle, Sam Laporta. We've seen Sam Laporta. Oh, my God, this guy's a top 5, top 3 tight end in the league this season.
Not 100%, I don't think.
But he's off the injury report, so maybe he's not 100%. But I think I have to do this just because I picked them before the season started. I picked this team to at least win one playoff game. I am indeed picking the Detroit Lions to win. I do think the 49ers score 31 points, but I do think the Lions get the win here, and they scored 34, narrowly beating out the 49ers. Now, I don't love this pick. I'm going to be 100% honest. I don't love it. But I think the way that Dan Campbell has coached this team, the amount of passion that this team has, the amount of motivation this team has. Now, injury-wise, it's not looking good. Defensively, passing in the passing defense realm, they're not great. I don't have the number up right now, but unless I do I have it quickly? I can't bring it up fast enough. But I think they're 19th in total defense. I think they're 27th in passing defense. It's not great. However, there is one part of their defense that falls directly into the major strength of the 49ers. The 49ers are, I'm bringing it up right now, the third best running team in the NFL. The Lions' defense is second in stopping the run. Both teams running the football are great. The 49ers are third, the Lions are fifth. I think the major concern for me is not about, will David Montgomery be able to run the ball? Will Jahmyr Gibbs run the ball? How will CMC do? Running games, they'll be as effective as they can be against two really great run defenses. My concern is if Jared Goff gets pressured, he is a different quarterback. I mentioned being kept clean against the Rams, who, by the way, this past defense gave up nearly 400 yards, or it's like 338 yards, I believe, or maybe more, to Matt Stafford in that first game. When kept clean, when not pressured, Jared Goff was 19 of 19. Perfect. He had, I think, 10 incompletions against the Bucs, or 9 incompletions against the Bucs. But still, he was incredibly effective when kept clean. When pressured, it's not pretty. He has the second most interceptions. I believe he has the second most turnover-worthy plays. When Jared Goff is pressured and uncomfortable, it's not great. But I will say, would Brian Branch intercept that ball that was thrown to Darnell Savage? Brian Branch would. Would C.J. Gardner-Johnson pick it off and house it? Yeah, he would. If Brock Purdy starts making mistakes, I think the Lions will capitalize. And I brought up the graphic before. The reason why the 49ers lose is not because of their defense or lack thereof. It's Brock Purdy turning the ball over consistently. 3 touchdowns to 11 total turnovers. That's where I think the Lions have a chance to win. If you could stop the run and it becomes a Brock Purdy throw fest, you have a chance. It's not a great chance because you're 27th in the passing defense.
Yeah, look at
But I'm saying right now, the most valuable player on your team, Christian McCaffrey, if you slow him down, it opens up Brock Purdy to make the young mistakes. The young mistakes, which we've seen.
Let's not forget that CMC is a pretty good pass catcher too.
He is. He's an all-around running back. That's why he's making
the
most
screen pass. You can dump it off to him, and he can get his runs that way. Get his space on the outside, catching a screen pass and running for a good gain.
Right. No, and I'm a little bit terrified of that.
And also, I'd say the 49ers. Their receiver core with Debo back out there is
going to be dangerous.
Ayuk is
what I would do?
He's really good. Kittle is great.
It is.
And
I'm not
Debo out there, I think Brock Purdy's got a lot of weapons to throw to.
100%. Debo Samuel is first in yards after the catch per reception. I think it's 8.7 is the number. So he's almost getting a first down after he catches the football, which that is incredibly dangerous. What I would do if I'm the Lions, early and often. Get it to Debo, hit him hard. See how healthy he actually is with that shoulder. Because if he's not 100%, he's going to be feeling it. He's going to walk over to the sideline, getting his shoulder adjusted, maybe get taped up, heat on it, whatever the case may be. Take the thermogun and start banging the shoulder around. Be physical. See how healthy Debo could be, because Brock Purdy looks uncomfortable without Debo Samuel out there. If you could slow CMC, make Brock Purdy throw it, it opens him up for young mistakes. They're not, like we've seen it. Look at the Ravens game in the red zone. He tries to go over the middle, doesn't even look at the safety over to the right side. The safety didn't even need to move to get the interception. We almost saw with Darnell Savage going over the middle. Darnell Savage doesn't even need to move. He drops the ball. But, the 49ers have weather on their side. They have home field advantage. They have a lot. So it's definitely going to be, I think it's going to be a great game regardless. Penei Sewell versus Nick Bosa, that's going to be a hell of a matchup.
There's a lot of
Trent
really
Williams
good
maybe
matchups.
versus Aiden Hutchinson. If they're on the same side, that's going to be a great matchup. But
I can't wait for these
I'm
games now. I'm fired up.
it should be. It's championship weekend. So we're reading the scores once again.
My picks were great last round, man. I think I won them all. Didn't I?
The Bills.
The
Bills,
Chiefs,
I right?
Picked the Bills.
So
that was a mistake. I should have picked them. I should have.
A lot of people picked the Bills to win, but these are the final scores for us. You have the 49ers winning 31-28. I have the Lions winning 34-31 and make it to the Lions' first ever Super Bowl. I'm in it for the story, and I'll admit, I might fall flat on my face from quarter one. But if there's a chance, the Lions, this is maybe the Lions' best opportunity to make it to the Super Bowl. This might be it.
Of course it is. I mean, they're in the NFC Championship game.
For the first time in 30, right?
They haven't been there for over 30 years, so they should. I hope they enjoy it. I hope they don't come out too tight. They could come out tight, Nate. They could come out tight and make mistakes.
They could. And Jared Goff might do that.
Yeah.
But I already know. Comment section is going to be brutal if the Lions lose. Brutal on me. So, no, just imagine if the Ravens lose. We pick the Chiefs. It's going to be brutal regardless. So, there it is. AFC, NFC Championship games, our picks in the books for year 2 of the Harvey Hour. All right, so the breaking news, kind of breaking news that I wanted to bring up for the show is we mentioned in the first topic who is potentially going to get the OC job for the Michigan Wolverines. And who was it that you said that I saw as well?
Sharon Moore.
And it's official. He does get the head coaching job for the Michigan Wolverines. That happened about 40 minutes ago.
He won 4 games for them when they were going through a little bit of controversy there. And they did win the national championship. If they hadn't won those 4 games when he was coaching, they probably wouldn't have gotten into the playoff.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, especially you lose one of those games, losing one game, and there's a chance you're out.
I like the college formats going forward. They're going to have many more games.
So a 12-team playoff, I believe?
Playoff. I like that a lot.
Instead of 4, but then you get the opportunity for, you have a lowly college team that gets in, and then whatever team is going to face them, they're going to get blown out. Maybe.
I don't know. 12 teams? There won't be too many lowly teams in there, I don't think.
Well, 12 teams opens it up. It's 3 times more likely than the top 4 teams.
I like it having more teams
no,
having a chance.
I do as well. I think it's going to be
and when you look at what happened to Florida State this past year.
I don't hate the fact that they didn't make it. Their quarterback got hurt.
Well,
they barely beat Louisville.
They were undefeated.
Right, the first ever undefeated team not to make the
playoff. Had a loss, and Alabama got in there instead of them.
When you lose your quarterback and barely beat Louisville, it's hard to say. By the way, Georgia, who lost, they were undefeated basically the entire way through. Alabama, who beat them, and Texas, who beat Alabama. It's hard to take some of those teams out. It's hard to. So, it's gonna be a fun Tuesday show. It's going to be a very, very fun Tuesday show. Yeah. We'll recap all the NFC Championship games. I do want to mention, though, shout out to the New York Knicks blowing out the Denver Nuggets. It was just a dismantling. And also say this, Jalen Brunson getting the All-Star starter snub? What is going on? He's been the New York Knicks for a while now. I just wanted to say that. It's bad. Getting an All-Star starter snub, think about this. In the month of January, OG Anunoby, Jalen Brunson, and Isaiah Hartenstein lead the NBA in plus-minus.
That trade looks pretty good for the Knicks.
Right now it does. And we didn't talk any basketball really at all besides the Adrian Griffin firing. But a little bit of a hot take. The Knicks in the playoffs, I'm afraid. I'm not predicting. I'm afraid it's going to go back to being Brunson or bust. Yeah. Julius Randle may fall apart. Anunoby won't be that second tier scorer. I don't think Dante DiVincenzo is the best two guard for you, but
the Knicks need
I might be wrong.
The Knicks need one more piece. The Knicks need one more piece.
They're going to try to trade for it, but the trade deadline is like 2 weeks from now, a week from now.
We'll see what happens.
Next offseason, reportedly, they're going to go big. They're going to go big. So, we'll have to wait and see for that. Basketball, there's a lot to talk about on Tuesday. But for this episode of the Harvey Hour, we thank you for watching as always.
Thank you.
My name's Nathan Harvey. That's my dad, Stephen Harvey. We have been your host of the Harvey Hour. Catch us Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube.
Night, Grandpa.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security